Project Zomboid is a very hard game to a new player. I mean, most people won't end up living past the first day, never mind a few days or even a week at that. You see, when the developers were creating Project Zomboid, they came up with a great zombie game with a bunch of cool ideas that a bunch of people have always wanted in zombie games. But this is all just locked behind a wall of difficulty. I mean, no joke, this game just smacked me in the face plenty of times before I was able to pull off one good playthrough. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the product of knowing just enough about the game in order to survive. But it's still not enough, so might as well just be nothing. To begin the adventure, I decided to start in Riverwood. It's one of the easier places to spawn in and start, and you can travel to any of the other cities in the game. So it doesn't really make too much of a difference, and I'd been playing a few playthroughs on Riverwood, so I knew about half of the map a little bit. After that, I changed the settings to Survivor and set zombies to not respawn. The Survivor difficulty is better for new players like myself who want to learn how to fight the zombies. Having no respawn mode would make a more immersive and easy journey for myself, as I could essentially clear out anything from an entire neighborhood to entire city if I want to. Next, we have our positive and negative traits. Now, the main goal is to balance enough negatives and positives so we have enough points for what we want. I grab a lot more negatives now, but my fucking brain just told me only to grab a few negatives. I ended up landing on a generic character who's a lumberjack. He smokes and reads slow, but he's lucky and has good eyes. So it's a fucking terrible build. With that all done though, we made our first character. I named him Ed Good because, well, he's a good character and he was going to bring me my first good run in Project Zomboid. But while this will be a tale of triumphs and hardships, unfortunately in Project Zomboid, everybody has to die eventually. So, we're ready to begin. Our character Ed spawned in a nice little house, not too big, but it's not terribly small. As I mentioned, this was my first good playthrough. Doesn't mean it was great. I forgot about watching TV for the first in-game half hour and then started looting immediately. The house didn't have a whole lot. I found a plunger and a leash I could use for a cat girl, but in this world the only item I did find that'd be useful was a leather jacket. This would come in handy as it would prevent zombies from scratching or biting us as easily and prevent us from dying. I figured I'd get all the experience, but of course I didn't, so for the first day we didn't even get up to level 1 cooking. That's a pretty bad start. With a house basically having nothing in it, Ed would now have to leave to see what's happened to his neighborhood. There's a bunch of zombies everywhere, all over the streets. A fucking mess. Being unarmed, Ed can only push over the zombies and stomp on them. So while we can handle maybe 1 or 2 zombies at a time, anything more than that is going to be a great challenge. Right now, Ed's main goal is going to be to get inside of his neighbors' houses to see if they have anything left. It would have been a lot easier had I picked a strength trait, but I had to do whatever kind of toxic bullshit build this was, so until we find a weapon, it's going to be quite a struggle. After clearing the first few zombies off, we got into the first house through the window, and immediately I almost got our game ended. Always crouch and press Q or use like clever tactics and stuff rather than just loot quick and think later. Luckily though, Ed ended up finding a crowbar right away, which is a very good weapon to start with. On top of that, there's plenty of food to bring back to our house, so I went back home and snagging a watch off of one of the zombies I killed, I could know when it was almost time for the carpentry show. The shows air at like 6 AM, 12, and then 1800, and watching the full show would get us up to level 1 carpentry, so we're slowly making our way to level 4. The reason why we need level 4 carpentry so bad is because the taps will go dry soon, and that means we won't have any water to drink or fucking wash our balls with. At that point, we either need to drink soda pop and beer to live, or we make a rain barrel collector, which will collect rain, and then we can boil it to disinfect the water, and then we can drink it. It's also one of the most useful skills in the game by far, so it's worth spending your time on. And now that Ed had a weapon, it was on. I mean, I started feeling like Hank from King of the Hill in that one episode where everyone calls him the block captain, because I had made it my goal that I need to cleanse the block of all zombies, restore rules to the neighborhood, and bring order in the name of propane and propane accessories. Ed would go on to loot some of the other houses, finding a hammer and some food. At this point, I probably should have stopped collecting food because there's just food everywhere, but I'm a noob, be gentle in the comments. Now, before, I had only been spawning in the rich houses near the bottom of Riverside and at the trailer parks, So I wasn't really quite sure where we were. I had Ed go over to his backyard and clear out a few zombies there, and then jump the fence to see what's lurking behind our home. I could see that there was a park and a parking lot, but I couldn't spend too much time fighting the zombies as I had too many negative debuffs affecting Ed. So we went back home for a quick meal and drink, and then going outside of the front of a house, there's like 4 more zombies on the lawn. This is a reoccurring problem any block captain needs to face, as you'll see later in the playthrough. It takes a lot of work. Instead of mowing the lawn, you just gotta kill the zombies that are on your lawn. But either way, somebody has to do it. Later on, Ed caught the last TV program that was on, which increased our fishing up to level 1. Useful if we ever get to sea and need a new food source. After sleeping for a few hours as well, we're kind of screwed, as Ed is in a constant state of panic. See, since he's a smoker and he hasn't had a cigarette since, well, probably yesterday, we're going fucking insane right now. So I had to make Ed's main goal to spend it clearing out the neighborhood looking for cigarettes. This was now another goal that we need to complete in game, as without cigarettes it's just going to be harder for us to survive and function properly. After looting the house, we decided to try and get some wooden planks. These we need because we can barricade our house windows with them, and without barricades a zombie can just easily break our window and then stumble right into our house, attack us, even when we're sleeping. I think if that happens when we're sleeping, we're basically fucked, but currently it's pretty hard to do anything as our carpentry skill is so low. We ended up destroying most of the furniture and not getting any materials out of it. I only got like 2 planks of wood after hours of trying. Ed stayed up until around 6 a.m. to catch a cooking show, finally getting that glorious level 1 cooking, and then we were able to make it over to the burned house on our block. This was a waste of time. Only thing that was here was fucking zombies and rubble, burnt ashes. After that, I went over the fence in the backyard to go check out what was up northwest from us. I checked the cars for keys, but I didn't find any car keys. And while doing that, I also ignored a bunch of matches in a glove box, which I could have used to light cigarettes. I could see that there was more vehicles though, as well as a complex of shops, so I quickly got distracted and started to explore in that area. And while yeah, Ed did see that there could be some potential loot in the stores, there were a lot of zombies hanging out, maybe 20 to 30 of them. So Ed left the area for now, going northeast this time, where there were smaller groups of zombies as well, but as well as some stores in reach that I could easily take over and loot. And after taking out almost a dozen zombies, Ed was pretty tired, so he went back home, but first killed a fireman, since Ed can be the only fireman now that he has found fireman gear. The fire department does not employ the undead. I should have taken his armor as well, as it would come in handy when my fire armor breaks, but oh well, remember, it's a noob run. And now we had a better idea of at least what the area looked like other than to the south. We still need to explore down there. But first, I had Ed go back home to read a bit of a cooking book and catch another carpentry show. After that, Ed went to sleep and slept right through the 1800s show and still had lots of negative mood bubbles. We really needed smokes as well to prepare for the events to come in the next few weeks. Deciding to make his way to the shops northeast, Ed checked inside all the shops for both zombies and unlocked doors, as we could just break a window and get in, but then we would have a chance of setting off an alarm unfortunately, so that would not be good. None of the front doors were open, so I went around back and found a few more vehicles to check, as well as some back doors. They were guarded by zombies of course, but using the trusty crowbar, Ed was able to clear out the undead, and after checking one last car which didn't have any keys in it either, Ed was able to get into the deli from the back door entrance. This was great, as most of the food of the deli would end up spoiling soon, so we could live off deli food before it perishes and then go on to our canned food. So I had Ed load his inventory right up and then make it back towards home. That way he could put all the goods that we found back. He did have a school bag now, which he found from a zombie, but he definitely still needed something bigger to help compensate for the lack of stuff we could bring back and forth on each trip. Either way though, Ed was still onto surviving 2 whole days in Project Zomboid. This is a pretty big accomplishment, seeing as about half of a Project Zomboid player base struggle to hit this. After watching our cooking show, I went back to the parking lot to lure some other zombies over to me. See, it's much more easy to just get a few to follow you, that way you can take them out and then go back to get a few more to follow you instead of just fighting all of them at once. After clearing some of a group guarding the stores, I went back to the northeast ones and took my chance breaking into a window to enter and see what there was around. The first store was a basic clothing store, so it literally had nothing I needed. The sports shop had an assortment of rackets and helmets, stuff that could come in useful if I ever break everything else that I already have, but there wasn't any baseball bats or anything really useful, so Ed didn't get anything cool from there either. The only store that would actually be useful was the furniture store, as I could destroy all the furniture to get carpentry experience and wooden planks. After doing some block captain activities, we were clearing out the neighborhood. We got to catch a 12 p.m. show, and that way we got level 2 in carpentry. A great accomplishment for Ed. After going to sleep, we missed the 1800 show again, perfect, and then woke up right before daylight went away. So to use the time efficiently, I had Ed go kill some more zombies that were on the main road. You know, editing these videos always pains me, as I could see now that one of the zombies had cigarettes on them. I was just too baked, or I didn't notice, so I didn't pick them up and just went on the way. But we're still looking for cigarettes, you know? We're in a 24/7 fucking super panic state. There's brain dead, man, and there's matches in a glove box. Like I said, it's a good playthrough, it's not a great one. Heading to the furniture store, Ed would try to get as many wooden planks as he could, and after filling up his school bag, he made it back home in order to barricade some of the windows. You can do up to 4 planks on each side of a window, so 2 to 3 on each window on one side would not be ideal, but it is better than having nothing for now. The next morning, there's a huge gathering of zombies on the road outside of Ed's house again, so of course you need to take them down to guarantee safety for the future. And now with every house on our block looted, I decided it'd be a good idea to go to the road southeast from the house and start looting those houses. This is when I almost let Ed get bite in the process. I was very uncareful and didn't check a closet, and a zombie almost got me. Luckily though, it didn't, and we were able to clear out the whole house, getting some very useful gardening supplies and some stuff we could use to set up farms and make a food source for Ed. And while at a very high level, a double bed will give you like 7 planks, Ed's level, he has like a 35% chance to get 2 wooden planks if he's lucky, so we're going to need to destroy a lot of double beds in order to get enough planks for Ed's base. Inside the house, Ed also found a key for the blue truck parked in the driveway. It even had a little bit of gas in it, so Ed was able to take it right to his home and park it in the driveway. This was awesome, a really good find. Ed now had a vehicle, and he was able to start a farm. Only problem we were facing though was the vehicle was very low on gas, and I still had no clue yet if there was a gas station. Unfortunately, like I figured out the playthrough after, there's one literally just up the road. I just fucking didn't know this yet. So since we didn't know where a gas station was, we would have to go around the neighborhood trying to siphon gas, you know, like Corey and Trevor do. I also now had cigarettes, but I didn't have matches or a lighter, so they were still useless. I did try to light the cigarette off of a stove or a fire, you know, like some ghetto shit, but the game doesn't have that in the game unless you get a mod, which I think is very worth getting. I mean, you're telling me homie is just sitting there with 60 cigarettes in his pocket next to a stovetop, freaking out because he doesn't have a heat source to light them? Fuck off. Ed would spend a while trying to organize all the things he had collected and prepared to go out for another loot run. Instead of running over, he could now drive to the houses we haven't looted yet, and finding a locked shed, we destroyed the door to check what was inside. Sometimes they end up spawning with generators, which we do really need once the power goes out, but we got unlucky here and there wasn't one in there. Now instead of going back and forth to base to drop off loot, after looting each house I could just dump all the loot into the back of a trunk, and I could fill this up easily with a few houses before having to go back. Luckily one of the houses had a lot of good stuff, including a gas can which I was searching for. On top of that, we're starting to get a lot of pretty good books, so this whole loot run was a pretty good one. After driving back, Ed had plenty of stuff to sort and put inside the base. So after spending quite a bit of time doing that, we would head back for another loot run. Other than just barricading, I needed wood to get more carpentry XP. And a rain barrel collector we need costs 4 wooden planks in total anyways, as well as garbage bags. So I'd be keeping a lookout for both of these on Ed's runs. By the time we drove back to the house though, there was a huge group of zombies, and once exiting the vehicle, I knew Ed couldn't take this many zombies at this time, so we had to make a run for it. It wouldn't be too hard to lose them, honestly, just running around a corner, hiding behind some trees that lost them right there. But now I had to figure out how I was going to get them away from the truck. I decided just to have Ed go back to base and rest for the night, and luckily most of the zombies ended up crossing the fence towards the stores or had gotten away from the truck, so by the time it was morning, it was already back in Ed's possession. We spent a couple in-game hours sorting stuff out of a truck into the house, and then drove over to the stores behind our house. After taking down a few of the zombies, I saw there was a VHS store, as well as a restaurant, a chiropractor's clinic, camera shop, and a liquor store. I believe out of all of these, the liquor store and VHS store are the most useful. You know, you can get drunk and watch a lot of cartoons from the 90s on VHS for the rest of your life. That sounds fucking awesome, actually. I want to do that in real life. Fuck the game. But realistically, we gotta use the booze to make Molotov cocktails, which will be a pretty good weapon to have, as well as the VHS store. They'll have VHS tapes there that'll give you experience, sort of like the TV shows do once you watch them. Time was getting close though, so Ed sprinted back home to catch his TV show and learn how to make a chair or something. And then after a nap, we put away all the booze we had collected from the liquor store. Easily enough for at least a 1 week bender. Ed went straight back to the stores, but didn't grab any VHSs as I didn't know they granted XP yet. I was still a pretty big noob, and this was right when the update dropped. But everything considering, honestly, we weren't doing too bad. We were surviving. Ed cleared out some more zombies between the post office to the food mart, and then I was able to search the post office, which was full of zombies. First two being taken down in the front room, moving to the first hallway, there were like 3 more zombies there. So Ed takes all of them down, only for 2 more to come after him. And after that, another fucking 2 appear. At that point, I just decided it was barely worth it to search the post office as we were getting tired, and there could have been a lot more zombies in there anyways. I still wanted to get around to seeing the rest of the neighborhood before I went back. So after this, Ed discovered a food store and a clothing store along with 3 more buildings. This way had too many zombies on that street, so instead of dying right there, I had Ed run back to the buildings and lost the zombies. At this point, we now had a lighter and smokes of inventory, so at base we could have a cigarette finally. I didn't know I had both of them. You know, this is one of the downsides to smoking weed in real life. Can you imagine if it was in Project Zomboid too? I mean, it makes everything a lot more funny, but it's like a negative trait IRL. Yeah, you just get funny moments out of it. That's the positive. After going back to the post office though, there were some books and things to grab, but nothing super useful we could use in the apocalypse. Ed was able to reclaim his vehicle and we made it back over to the house. Unfortunately, this attracted a huge group of zombies back over to the base, and I really started to panic. Ed brought the zombies to the end of the street and ran back to his house only to see that there were even more zombies there too. This was not a good spot to be in. We had to flee to the stores, and even then, we still had to take down some of the undead that were chasing Ed. He was getting very tired at this point, as well as hungry, and of course, fucking panicked. So I decided to take a dash for it and try to get to another house until the zombies had separated from each other. Using the house across the street from Ed's house, we were able to get some sleep, but with no food or smokes on us, we still weren't at full strength. Looking out the window though, most of the zombies had moved over to the right side of my house, so with Ed being the block captain he had no choice but to go and fight the zombies to retake the block. Slowly but surely, we were able to lure over just a few zombies at a time and thin out a large group that was scattered around the area. When going back home, I noticed the front window was completely broken and a zombie spotted us through it. This wasn't cool. With a busted window, any zombie could just easily break in while Ed's sleeping and fucking eat him. That's horrible. So we had to make sure that we took care of a majority of the zombies that were behind and around the house. That way we're a bit safer for a few hours. After that though, it was back to exploring and gathering materials. At this point, I had forgotten to figure out how to siphon gas, which wasn't good. I mean, even Corey and Trevor could fucking figure that out. So at this point, my only goal was to find a gas station. I was also just having so much fun killing zombies and getting experience, I couldn't really stop until it was Ed's bedtime. Heading back to the post office, Ed killed the rest of the zombies that were left inside, and we were lucky enough to find a water dispenser. While not a rain barrel collector, these beauties do hold 250 units of water, so it's plenty of room to put all of our water in or store water for the time being. I had him pick it up and then jump a fence while holding it, so this ended up giving Ed another injury. Like, Ed bandaged it, and within 10 fucking steps, the bandage was already dirty and we had to change it. This was due to us carrying way too much stuff, and we had to fucking insane amount of negative mood sets at this point. But at least once we got back home, we were able to find a spot for the water dispenser and start to combat all the negative mood sets we had acquired. I found where I put the cigarettes, so after a full week, Ed could finally start to smoke and get rid of a panic mood 24/7. Ed was really tired, but we need to board up the windows in the house in case the zombies attempted to end up getting in. A couple tried to jump Ed at his back door, and they ended up taking forever to kill, about 8 hits each, as Ed was insanely tired. Still though, he powered it out and was able to board up all of the windows just a little bit, as well as catch his show right before it cut out. Now that it's been a little bit, things are only going to get worse from here. Power and water are slowly going to start going out, and Ed is barely prepared for any of this. When heading back to the city streets to clear out more zombies, this is when Ed found the tool shop. Finally, we can get a lot of useful tools and things we need to make our base better and make new bases. Plenty of stuff to help with farming, fighting, and carpentry. The tool shop is a definite must hit for most players. It was a pretty good score, and after getting back home, we tried to jump a fence and ended up getting another fucking injury. This was driving me nuts. After going home, I had to fucking rip some dead zombie clothes apart, that way we can make bandages out of it and, patch up our injury. I had Ed put all the goods he found back into storage, with some stuff still left at the store, as he had found so much and his inventory was full. I had set up some boxes as we were almost out of storage in our cabinets, and after this we ended up losing just a few minutes of footage, but not really much. Ed just fast traveled to the post office, and he was on his way back from another loot run. We found a radio, which I used and I set up in the house, that way we could pay attention and find out when an event was going to happen. I really didn't want to miss the message, but I ended up missing the message anyways, and this shit hits Ed right away. A helicopter just starts to obnoxiously fly over Ed's head. This causes every zombie in the area to notice and start to get dragged towards your location. This means we need to get out of here ASAP. Got in a vehicle, started driving through zombies that were blocking away. I fucking crashed into a light pole. I was in full panic mode. This was my first helicopter event ever. I had Ed driving up north, that way we could get away from the base and also lure the zombies up north if anything. The last thing you want is every zombie in the area to gather and then overtake your base. That'll make his job as a block captain really, really hard. Eventually, we were getting low on gas though, and with the vehicle causing so much noise, I decided to park it near the forest and try to make my way through there and hide amongst the trees. For the next 3 in-game hours, Ed would run through the forest to slowly make his way back over to his home. We had successfully survived the events that kill most players on their very first attempt. Ed is a god. Moving back south, Ed went back to his vehicle and he parked and took base in a house next to his truck for the night. That way he can get some rest and let the time settle. And after this, I drove right by the gas station. I didn't notice it since I wasn't really concerned. I was just wanting to go back home since I was stoned. Right after this, Ed was out of gas, so I stupidly parked the car beside the burger place, that way I could return to it. Meanwhile, the burger place is one place over from the fucking gas pumps. It's right next to it. Yeah, this was a horrible move by me. I got no excuse for this. I had Ed walk down through the park, killing any other remaining zombies in order for him to finally arrive back home. Now that the helicopter event was done, we had plenty of loot at this point, but we were still missing the carpentry levels, as well as a farm, generator, water source. Okay, so basically everything essential to survive. So the next morning, we had to change up our game plan. By digging furrows using the tools we found, Ed was able to set up a small 4x4 crop spot to grow. I had him then plant some strawberry, broccoli, cabbage, and carrot seeds. That way the next few weeks, we'd have some fresh food. After planting all the seeds, Ed used his water dispenser to fill up his watering can and other containers in order to water all the crops. This uses quite a bit of water, but it will be well worth it in the long run. After a good sleep, Ed woke up at 2 a.m. and began to make a meal to start his day. He was able to make a burger, which is probably the most effort he's put into any meal in his life going so far. The goal for today was to collect planks and level carpentry up to level 4. Ideally, you want to read books to get an XP multiplier, but this is a new playthrough, so I didn't do that. Just be glad I told you because I did it myself without, and it is fucking dumb. Ed would wander around the neighborhood until he arrived at a small corner store. There was some produce here, but it was all rotten now as it's been sitting there for over a week. Luckily, the refrigerated goods were all still fine with plenty of canned goods, soda pops, and candy for him to take home. I mean, Ed was living a pretty good life, all things considering. His house was nice for the zombie apocalypse, he had plenty of weapons and stuff that he owned now. I mean, the whole area around him was almost clear, and day by day it was becoming safer. Adam continued down the road until he found a place full of furniture, as well as a bookstore and other places around it. There were lots of zombies though, so we would have to thin out these groups by killing a few at a time. Using the machete we found at the tool shop, Ed was able to get a hit on most of the zombies in just one killing them, and take most of them down just with ease. I had also destructed a part of a fence just so that we wouldn't have to hop over it anymore and risk injury just to get home. I had Ed carry a second water dispenser back home, that way we can now store at least 500 units of water. This is pretty good. And during the night, I decided to test my idea that the Cook Show VHS might give cooking experience. And to my surprise, it did. This was revolutionary in my mind. I knew for sure now I had to raid the VHS store. But of course, for the moment, I just stuck to destroying furniture for wooden planks. I mean, on the bright side, our entire house was getting barricaded, and by the time we did get those levels, we'd have plenty of wooden planks. Going back into the city, I went to the bookstore, and seeing as it was locked, I decided to try and destruct the door. While doing this, I heard a zombie pretty close by, and I'm so thankful it decided to attack the window and not me from behind. Once in the bookstore, I had Ed search all of it for skill books, and man, he found a lot. There's a lot of good reasons to come to a bookstore. It's definitely a must hit, as the books will make your skill progression in game far more reasonable than being an insane fucking grind. I had Ed load up his inventory with books and then head back towards his house. With us finding the carpentry book, I can now read it and increase how fast we gain carpentry experience. These books take around like half a day to read though, because we're a slow reader, so while it's pretty time consuming, I can always just speed up the in-game clock to get through them pretty fast in real life. So after I finished the carpentry book, I went on to basic first aid. Now that we have the XP multiplier, I was ready to go out there and get our carpentry up. With a 5 times multiplier, destroying one desk is like destroying 5 desks, so now we could reasonably level the skill up fast. Ed got his skill about halfway to level 4, and then we decided to go back home. He had to go water his crops before they dry up and then get some rest. During the night when we woke up, I went to my neighbors' houses and dismantled every piece of wooden furniture I could find. Going back to the city, started destroying public benches, fucking shop stands, anything you name. And we finally got to level 4. With this, Ed could go back home and finally construct a rain barrel collector beside his farm. I also gathered enough materials to build 3 of these in total, so that way we could hold plenty of water in all of them. The next day, Ed went back to the bookstore and picked up some more books as he needed to read some more. Finding the advanced carpentry book was our main goal, and we were successful, so we can now get up to an 8 times multipliers for levels 5 to 6 on carpentry. After that, I just had Ed go home and read some more books. We read the beginner's book on foraging and mechanics as well. So after a full day of reading, it was then time to explore. Looking in a couple parking lots for vehicles that would have gas in it, Ed wasn't very successful. I mean, we at least found a couple of golf bags, which were way more room than the lousy school bag we'd been lugging around the entire playthrough. And after going home to drop off loot, I decided to head back to the parking lot and check out that building in the area. There's actually a grocery store full of food, tools, seeds, other useful things. Unfortunately, all the produce and deli meat were all rotten, but the canned goods and everything else on the shelves were still fine to take back. I filled Ed right up with food, water, and other things we needed to survive, and then made it back home. And the next day, Ed would continue to look for the things he needed, either gas, a new vehicle, a generator, or a gas station, which he didn't know was already right near him. I mean, we had made it all the way to the school and still no sight of either of the 4. Ed looted a bunch of local houses, but nothing really new yet that we needed. So when getting home and putting everything away, it was on to reading the fishing book and trapping book, because why not? Ed was now 20 whole days into his adventure, and the power's out, the taps are dry. He wasn't living lavish, but like he wasn't living horrible at the same time. We would still need to find the generator, that way we could have power again. And our vehicle that's been left at a burger place is right next to a fucking gas station. Yeah, it's still there. So I searched all around this area, except for the gas station. I had Ed search the whole area for the gas station. Like, I felt so dumb the next playthrough when I spawned right next to it and saw it was right there. I had Ed sleep overnight at a house as we looted more homes looking for what we need, and during his loot run, he ended up finding a house that was barricaded, meaning it potentially would have good weapons inside of it. I would have to be careful as there were zombies just trapped inside of it, and this proved to be pretty difficult as one of them was freaking me out by being stuck on a toilet, not being able to move. After killing that one, we moved through the house slowly and then went to the front around the corner and could find the last zombie that was inside of there. Unfortunately, it was a pretty basic house. I mean, nothing too special. After that, we head back, making sure to stay clear of a gas station and go back home to unload the rest of our loot. The next day, it was time to head into the city of Riverside and check for more vehicles, gas, and keys. None of which I would ever find. I mean, Ed made it to the rich spot of town by the church, and there were a lot more zombies around here. It made sense, seeing as Ed only explored the other half of the town. The south half of the town is completely all alive. Or, well, I guess in this case undead, but well, fuck off, you know what I mean. Ed slaughtered 2 big groups of zombies, clearing a huge path, and with that he could finally start to search some of the 2-story homes. I was destroying a lot of furniture as the rich houses had plenty of wooden furniture sitting there, and I wanted to really hit level 7 carpentry, that way I could build the even bigger rain barrel collector. After slaughtering the whole block, Ed was starting to consider becoming block captain of this street as well, as the houses are a lot nicer, and even have an upstairs where his home doesn't. Ed killed about 40 zombies before heading back to one of the houses to rest. The next day, I had him move to the street over when all of a sudden, his machete broke while fighting, leaving him with just a hammer to kill 4 zombies attacked. He knew he couldn't just keep fighting with a hammer. It wasn't a really good weapon compared to something with a range and that could do multiple hits at once. We had to go back home, but in a parking lot on the way, I found a vehicle with enough gas to fill up my gas can by half. While it wasn't much, after getting home and unloading our inventory and getting a weapon, we could go back to Burger Spot and fill up our truck with some gas. The front was pretty fucked from when I rammed it into 2 streetlights and a tree, but other than that, it was running perfectly fine, so I could return the truck back to our home. Finally, it was day 23, and at this point, I needed to purify some water bad for my rain barrels. So by chopping down a tree, I was able to use the wood from that to build a campfire, and then using some cooking pots and all the other containers I had, I was able to put the water into those and then boil it on a fire. That way it was purified and we could then put it into the water dispenser. Some of our carrots were ready for harvest as well, which was pretty exciting, seeing as I had no generator or power at all. All the food in my fridge was pretty much spoiled, so these carrots would help me not use up all the canned food I had right away. We can now adventure in the city and at least had a food source by eating carrots for a few days. I really wanted to grind some carpentry XP, so we went back to destroying stuff around the town and clearing zombies. Eventually, Ed ends up making it to the boat club, and after clearing out the area, he took a quick nap before starting to explore the building. One by one, starting to destroy all the furniture for hours on end, nearly until nightfall, and Ed almost got to carpentry level 5. Now before I could go back to base, I wanted to check all the cars nearby to see if there's any gas or anything I could salvage. That's when I saw one single lonely zombie I wanted to kill before heading back all of a sudden. Ed missed his swing. The zombie bit him. This meant Ed was now infected with the zombie virus. Pain, panic, tiredness. Ed was not in a good condition. Ed tried to make it back home, and just 2 zombies gave him a fucking fight for his life. He could barely breathe or swing his baseball bat due to fatigue, and just managing to take those zombies down before arriving home, Ed tried to do everything he could to prevent becoming a zombie. Taking antibiotics, washing all his clothes from... washing all the clothes for blood, disinfecting the bite as much as possible, constantly resting. We're trying to change the bandage, but it only seemed to slowly progress and get worse. Ed wasn't about to give up though. He was the block captain. So the next day he was feeling a little bit better and decided to go out looking for gas and a generator. But still, something wasn't exactly right. I mean, smokes calmed him down, but not for very long, and he was in a constant off and on pain. Even trying to do some exercise, maybe thinking some burpees would get rid of a sickness, it really wouldn't. As after waking up one time, Ed was queasy. This is basically guaranteed death in Project Zomboid after a bite. But Ed still had some life in him. He couldn't give up. He didn't want to. After waking up and tending to his wound, he headed out of the house and searched for a generator again. Heading to the city in which he was infected in, passing the school of a rich neighborhood, Ed found a little shed in which it had a generator. The dream was fulfilled. All he had to do now was haul this monster back over to base, and that wouldn't be an easy task, as Ed was fatigued the moment he picked up the generator. He ended up scratching himself on his fence, making his day not any easier for him, and he would have to walk through a zombie-filled town and limp over to his home. After just a few hours, Ed ended up making it home and put the generator inside and didn't even care about using it yet. While he could try to kill himself by filling the home with smoke, that wasn't the way he wanted to go out. As well as he didn't read the book on how to use generators, so he didn't know how to do that. Ed had basically just spent the past 3 weeks collecting books, comics, fucking booze, cigarettes, so it was time to party. Ed kept on eating his carrots he grew himself, which he was very proud of, drinking fine bourbon. Since he only had like a week to live, he basically had enough booze for a lifetime, which is, still not that funny. Slowly starting to hurt more, wake up missing 1/8 of his health bar, and it was steadily only going down. Trying to sleep didn't work, getting drunk didn't work, not even smoking his brains out would end up working. Ed was completely fucked. So at half a health bar, he started to come to terms with his fate, so he would spend the last bit of time he had at home as block captain where he belonged. He would have a few more bottles of booze to finish off while his health was just a sliver away from being gone. He looked around and thought about his peace he created inside of his home. At least there wasn't zombies crawling on the walls while he's dying. I mean, it could be a lot worse. It's unfortunate he won't get to live through the zombie apocalypse, but he did at least clear out half a town, making it a safer place for anyone to come back to again. Ed Good wasn't just a good block captain, he was a great one. For that, Ed Good finally died. 28 days, 11 hours, 520 zombie kills. Ed Good was now destined to guard his Riverside neighborhood as the block captain, but this time in the afterlife as a zombie. That was a pretty good playthrough. I want to wrap things up and reflect on it a little bit, talk. This was a pretty awesome time. I mean, I haven't had a very fun playthrough in a game like this for a very long time, and right when Ed died, I just wanted to play the game again. So I really like it. The story of Ed will definitely stick in my head for a while due to how up and down it was. Not only was it being like my first good playthrough in my opinion, but it was a very like newbie playthrough with a lot of good mistakes. So even though I could show you guys all how to survive a month in game, if you can just do a little bit better than all the bullshit that like I pulled off, you can probably end up surviving for months to years and become a very good player. I do want to address, wow, some people might be saying, well, I thought you would have survived like 30 days or like a month. Well, 28 days is the amount of days that February has in it, so fucking chew on that one. Alright, it just looks better for the title. And either way, I figured that's just what I would call this playthrough. If you guys really like these types of stories or like playthroughs that are edited, make sure you leave a like and a comment. Those help motivate me to make more, as well as join my Discord server or follow me on any other social medias as well. I do hopefully plan to be playing some multiplayer Project Zomboid, so plan to get a few subscribers and people in the community in there. So if you're looking for people to play with, then Discord server would be the place to go for that. Either way though, it did take me a long time to put this together with scripting, recording, editing, all that crap, and I'm just starting to get everything put together at my new place, so I'm hoping uploads should be a little bit more frequent. I'll be online a lot more. We getting back to business, everything's back to normal just about. But either way, thank you for watching to this point. Your watch time and you enjoying the video helps push it to other people and helps me get out there, so thank you. I'm glad I got to share this gaming adventure with you, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.